Okay, so first we'll do a quick review of what we learned yesterday. Yesterday we were discussing if you could rely on the fact that if someone's alive, that he's going to stay alive. And the Gemara had a stira, because our Mishnah says that if a woman who's married to a Kohen, if her husband goes away and travels, she can assume he's alive and she continue to eat truma on his behalf. The problem is we had another brisa that says that if a woman received a get from her husband who was traveling, and he said that if I'm not back by a certain time, the get should be chal right before I die, there we do not allow her to eat truma anymore. So the question is, are you concerned that he died or not? So the Gemara had a couple of different approaches to it. But ultimately, what the Gemara said was, L'shema meis loy chashinam. There's a chazaka that says he's alive now. Therefore, without the factor of the get, we assume he's alive and she can continue to eat truma. But l'shema yamus, we said there, you don't have any more a chazaka by a shema yamus to say that he won't die. We only have a chazaka that he didn't die. And therefore, the brisa that says, morning. Oh, okay. So today's shir is dedicated Lishus Rav Ruvain ben Rav Eliezer ben Zalewski, Zechen Levracha. She's the Shamash should have an Aliyah, and he should be a male Yosher for the Zanavsky family and for the whole Besmedrash. It was his Besmedrash. Okay, Gavalti. So the halach is the Shema Yomas, but in the case of when he gave the get and said it should be chal a minute before he dies, Shema Yomas Chashinan, because as Rashi says on Amid Beis, no chazaka says he won't die. The chazaka at the most will say that he didn't die. However, Reb Meir argues on that, because Reb Meir said in the case of the barrel of wine that he bought from the Kuzim, he said you could use brera to separate the truma and the meiser, and you're not concerned that the barrel's going to break. So the Gemara says, Shema Yamus, Reb Meir holds that's not a problem, yet the Chachamim, Reb Yosy, Reb Shimon, Reb Yehuda holds it is a problem, because you don't have a chazaka of Shema Yamus. You don't have a chazaka of Chai Keneged, the Chash of Shema Yamus. But everybody agrees you have the chazaka of Shema Meis. So our Mishnah, which the chazaka of Shema Meis, the chazaka takes care of that because he has a cheskes chai. Everybody across the board holds that she can continue to eat truma. The case where she got the get, that will be totally the machloikas. According to her Meir, she would still be able to continue eating truma, but according to the other Tanoim, Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yehuda, she would not be able to continue eating truma. Then the Gemara talked about the third case in the Mishnah where it talked about sending a carbon. The Gemara asked, how can you send a carbon? You always have to go by yourself. You have to do smicha. So the Gemara answered, it's either speaking where a woman sent the carbon or it was a chata sa'oif. Then we got to the next Mishnah, which talked about when you have to assume that when can you assume someone's still alive, and when do you have to start being concerned that maybe someone's not alive. So the case where you need to be concerned that someone might not be alive is a city that was under siege that fell to the invaders, or somebody was on a ship and the ship went down, and somebody who is yoytze lehari. All these cases, you have to be machmer with all the chumras that would exist if the husband was alive, and you have to be machmer with all the chumras that would exist if the husband was not alive. And the Mishnah tells us what those chumras are. If it's a bas Yisrael lakoyin, and she's only eating truma because she's married to this kohen, she can no longer eat truma, because there's a legitimate chashash that he might not be alive. On the flip side, if she was a bas kohen who married a Yisrael, we can't assume that he died, and therefore she could not go back to eat the truma of her father's household. So the Gemara delved a little bit into the Mishnah that says, Yoytze leharik, somebody is condemned and he's going out to death. It's not a sure bet that he's going to die, it's a suffix. So we had two Lashonis in Rabbi Yosef. In one Lashon of Rabbi Yosef, he said that when is it a suffix if it's a Jewish court that condemned him? Because till he actually is executed, there's a small chance that he will be exonerated. There'll be a schus for him. So therefore, that's what our mission is talking about. But if he was condemned by a goyish court, he's not going to live. He's for sure going to be killed, and therefore we can assume for sure that he is dead. That was in the first lashon of Rabbi Yosef. The second lashon of Yosef was exactly the opposite. In a Jewish court, we know for sure he's dead. There's a small chance that someone was melamed schus after he was condemned. That's not something that we would need to be concerned with. But if it was a goyish court, then you have to worry that maybe he bribed somebody, maybe he got out of it. So that was that sugya, and then we got to the sugya that we're up to now, is under what conditions is a shliach allowed to appoint another shliach? So our Mishnah on Daf Chavtes Amud Aleph said, "Hamevi get Be'eretz Yisrael v'chala," and the shliach became sick and therefore was no longer able to fulfill the shlichus. Hareza mishalcha b'yaracher. And the Gemara ended up saying that we actually have two approaches. V'chala might be lavdavka, could be even without chala, you're allowed to give it over to somebody else. But if someone said, not just take the get, but someone said, you take the get, there you would not be able to pass it on to somebody else, because there you saw that the mishalayach, the husband, wanted you to do it. There, if it was chala, you would still be able to give it over to somebody else. That was one nusach that we had in the Gemara right before we finished yesterday. The other nusach that we had in the Gemara is, no, you could only give a get over if it was chala. And if it was not chala, you cannot give it over. And that's where the mishalech stam gave it to you. If the mishalech specified, I only want you to do it, then even if it's chala, even if you can no longer fulfill your shlichus, you could not appoint somebody else. Those were the two approaches that we had in the Gemara that we finished off with at the end of the day. Now we're going to be focusing on the second half of the Mishnah, which says, what if when I was mamana the shliach, when the husband was mamana the shliach, he gave him a second job. And what did he do? She has my Rolex, get it back for me. So now a get, he might not be so concerned as to who carries it, but he doesn't try to trust anybody with his Rolex. Therefore, lo yishal cheni b'yarach. Then the shliach should not appoint another shliach to do the get and the Rolex because of the Rolex problem. So it's mashma, the get would be kosher. But since there's two requirements here, because of the Rolex issue, you shouldn't appoint another shliach. The husband doesn't want some other unnamed, unknown shliach to bring back his Rolex. He wants you, because he trusts you, to bring back his Rolex. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to drill down a little bit into this halacha. So now we learned, maybe get Be'eretz Yisrael. Oh, thank you so much. This is our Mishnah. Maybe get Be'eretz Yisrael. So no b'fani nechtav or b'fani nechtav is necessary. V'chala, and he became unwell. Hareza mishalchoi b'yaracher. He can pass it on to another shliach. Or many freik the Gemara. Omar l'shnayim, if someone told two people to nu get le'ishti, or l'shloisha, or to three people, and the difference between 2 and 3 is 3 could be a bezdin, and he told them kisru get utnu le'ishti, they have to do it themselves. They cannot hire somebody else to do it. So the kash is going to be, you see that one shliach cannot give it over to another shliach. So how could our Mishnah say that a shliach may give it over to another shliach? But let's look at Rashi to see the distinction between, if you notice there's a little bit of a difference in what he told the 2 people and what he told the 3 people. The 2 people, he only said tnu get le'ishti. The 3 people, he said kisu get utnu le'ishti. So what is that distinction? And that's what Rashi will clarify. Zokt Rashi, Amar l'shnaim tnu get le'ishti, v'lo nosam lahem get. He didn't give them a get. So when he said tnu get le'ishti, and he's not handing them a get, obviously he wants to make them in charge of creating that get. So what is he really doing? Also, he's telling them, you're going to be the Adam on the get. Even though he didn't tell him, I want you to write it yourself. He didn't say that, but we know that's what it means. They have to write the get, and they'll give the get. They cannot hire a sofer. he meant that they themselves should do this by themselves. But Oil Shloisha, there he had to actually say kisvu. So if he was speaking to Shnayim, we automatically understand that he meant to tell them they must write it. But if there's 3 people involved, then you would have had an option to say that he didn't mean that they should write it. That's why he had to say kisvu b'perish. Why is that? Why by 3 would you not say that he wants them to write it themselves? Without kisvu, then they have a right. They can have somebody else do it. You know why? Because when you're talking to 3 people, you're talking to a bezdin. If Neshasam bezdin, bezdin has the right to appoint a shliach. But whatever the case is, you see from here, from this distinction between 2 and 3, that by 2 people he didn't even have to say kisvu. By definition, it meant kisvu, that they have to do it themselves. And it's only if there's 3 people where it would be a bezdin who has the right to be Maman Shliach, only there did he have to speak out kisvu to make it clear that he doesn't want them to do that. But at the end of the day, you still see Alma ein hayochid oisha shliach. You see that a yochid cannot make a shliach. The 2 people never had that option to make a shliach. And therefore, the husband didn't even have to say kisvu. Yet, in our Mishnah, we see clearly that a yochid does have the option to make a shliach. Zok to Gemara, the answer is as follows. Omar Abaye, Hasam Taimamai, you know why in that Mishnah that we just quoted, it's assumed that they have to write the get themselves and they cannot subcontract it out to somebody else? We should be zoyin the Baal, because it's very humiliating to the Baal that he can't write the get by himself. He's an Amma Oretz. It's embarrassing. So he doesn't want too many people to know about it. I asked you to write it. Don't go to somebody else. Not everyone's going to be talking about that, and I don't know how to write a get. So Rashi, bizoyin the Baal, shalom l'chayves a get. The Eino Reitza sheyedu boy Rabbim. I don't want everybody to know she'eino yodeya l'koisvay. So that's why I don't want it going further. That's why this is the fault. Zokt. I'm not finished the Suda. We're still in the middle of the Suda. Let the Gemara finish talking before you jump in. Amr Abaye, Hasam time amai mishum bizoyin the Baal. The whole reason there is because of bizoyin the Baal. Hacha Baal loikapid. Here there is no svara of bizoyin the Baal, because he's giving them a regular get. He's just making them a shliach leilacha. So the loikapid the makapedika. What possible kapedika could there be? He delivered the get. He's just asking them to give it over. So there's no problem with him having them pass it from one person to the next, because it doesn't look bad on him. Where's their kapeda where it's going to look bad on him? Okay, so what's the next thing? That's what the Gemara says. You can't argue on the facts of the Gemara. The Gemara is like, what should I do? The Gemara says that a person should be able to know how to write a get. If a person knows how to write a get, maybe he'll be more careful not to write a get. But you see, he has to know. It's expected that he would know how to write. So Zok to Gemara, that's the difference. When you're just talking about a shliach lelocha, you're not talking about someone writing a get. There is no hakpada at all. Rav Amar, Rav says, and this is a major shas sugya mishum de mili ninhu umili loymemser l'shliach. You know why you can't pass on the shlichus of the Baal to write the get? It's because mili loymemser l'shliach. By a regular shliach lelocha, we're going to see Rashi inside, because there's many pshatim in the Rishonim about how mili works. But I'm just going to focus on Rashi. When you have a get in your hands, like in our Mishnah, and I'm giving it to you, so you don't just have a mili, you have actually a get here, and therefore you could pass that get out to somebody else. But if all I told you to do was write me a get, I didn't give you anything, that's mili. Mili cannot be passed on to somebody else. And that's why in our Mishnah, you have a get, you can pass it on to another shliach. But when the whole shliach is just to write the get, it's only a verbal command, that cannot be passed on further. Let's see how Rashi says this. Rav Amar, Hasam Hainu Taima, Talimash for Shliach, this is a Mamsha Velt Sugya, Talimasar Lahem El Dvorim. All he gave them were words. The Ein Bidvorim Koyach Lioitz Choyzin V'dim Sorim La'acher. You can't pass on words. Aval Get, Hishbe B'Shosha, when you're giving them a get, that he can pass on, that Choyzer V'dimsim. So there's a lot of Torah about this. There are those who even say another svar, that what is creating the gerushin? The get creates the gerushin. So therefore, I don't need so much the shlichs to go on. The get's doing it. It's the paper that does it. But in other types of cases, where, like for instance, like by kedushin, or in a get where I didn't give him the get, I just told him to give the get. There, I'm not really passing on anything. The marit, I'm sorry. Right. I understand, but the get to is right. The get to have decreases, right? Even if you told the Masir Kashi, you get it. And the other, the Marit says a huge chiddush in Mili. We most Rishonim hold that Mili is not relevant where the Adon or the Baal or anybody is making a shliach. The Mili only gets involved if we're talking about a shliach making another shliach. But the Marit says a chiddush that that you cannot be memana somebody to make hektish for you. I cannot tell my friend, go be maktish my cow for me, because that's called Mili. It's only the sheet of the Marit, who's an Achron, which everyone talks about, that it's a shvera opinion, but that's what the Marit says, that Mili could even be a problem with the first person making the shliach in the first place. So I don't know the Marit Klor. I didn't look it up, but there's probably special reasons by Hektish why it would be relevant. But I'm just giving you the Rashi Prokim. So Zok Gemara weiter. So Zok Gemara, here we don't have Bizoin. The Baal, Rabba said the reason why it's different is by us it's not Mili, and by the case of Kisvu Nu it's a problem of Mili. What's the difference? My now, what's the difference if the problem is Mili or if the problem is Bizayin? Zok Gemara, very simple. Ikebenayu shliach matana. If I'm sending a matana to somebody, I'm making a shliach to give a matana. Dr. Rashi, if I command two people to write a star matana l'ploin, if the reason why it wouldn't have worked by get because of a bias svara of bizoyin, meaning the Baal doesn't want them to be mamana somebody further because he's embarrassed. He doesn't have to give a matana, and he's not mechuyev to write the star. It's not normally his responsibility. By get is his responsibility, but by matana it's not his responsibility, so there's no bizoyin. So if it was a star matana that I'm telling two Adam, write me a star matana, they're allowed to tell somebody else because he doesn't mind. But if you hold that I'll tell to Mili, this is the same problem with Mili. If I'm telling somebody to write a star matana, they can't tell somebody else because it's the same problem of Mili. So that's an nafkamina. The nafkamina is shliach matana. Tosfos points out, did we not say that it's the woman whose responsibility is to write the get? Didn't we learn that she pays for the get? So the whole premise of Bizoyin is based on the fact that it's his primary responsibility, and he's embarrassed that he's not able to fulfill his responsibility, but it's not his responsibility. It's the woman's responsibility. So Tosfos addresses that, and Tosfos says, no, he said, my Bizoyinika, but Nana Isha Kaiseves es Gita. Alma Ena Labalich. Of course, it's the husband's responsibility to write. Isha kosher the Yodalakmi. Isha Kaiseves get means if she does it and she's mocked at him, it will work. But in the mice, it's still his primary responsibility. Now she'll do it because she wants to get it done, but technically it's still his primary responsibility. Because obviously he's letting her do it. But when he's making a shliach, I never said you should make another shliach. So where he's waving his bizoyin, that he shows his das. So Zok the Gemara. So this nafkamina by matana, we could say ubepluk to the Rav Shmuel. In fact, Rav and Shmuel actually have this machlokes. Rav Amar matana einikaget. Rav said a star matana, you could pass on the responsibility to write a star matana, but I get you can't. So clearly, Rav learns like Abaye that it's because of bizoyin, which doesn't apply to matana. Matana, how you can get, meaning you cannot tell two Adam to write a star matana, and they cannot tell another person. So why? Because it's a svar of Mili. So Shmuel would hold like Rabba is because of the svar of Mili. Zok the Gemara weiter. V'im Amar loy toy li heimena chayfetz plani. What if I told the shliach, while you're at it, giving her a get me back my Rolex? So then the Gemara says, als ein mitzoyni sheyehei pegdoni bi'aracher, als the pekadon dekalacha, not a gittin dekalacha, als the pekadon dekalacha, you should not appoint anybody else. Amar Rish Lakish, Zok Rish Lakish, Kan Shona Rebbe. Here in middle of Gittin, Rebbe's telling us a halacha about Hilchas Bav Metzia. Eina shoyel rashoy lahashel, veina soicher rashoy lahaskir. In other words, you're not allowed to pass on from one shomer to another shomer. A shoyel is not allowed to give it to another shoyel. A soicher is not allowed to give it to another soicher. Now, it also means a shomer chinim can't give it to a shomer chinim, and a shomer socher can't give it to a shomer socher. So why didn't it say that? That would be a bigger chiddush. It's partial just because you lent it to me. Who said you're lending it to somebody else, right? But who said I can't give over a shmira? So there are those who learn that in a way this is the bigger chiddush as well. Because when you lend me something, you're giving me much more control over it than if you were just giving it to me to watch. Nevertheless, I'm not a bailaminit enough to be able to pass it on to somebody else. So Zokt Rish Lakish, here in the middle of Gittin, Rebbe, the Tana of the Mishnah, is teaching us above Metzia Dikashayla. Amal Rabbi Yochanan, that doesn't make any sense. Zu afilu tinoike shal beis rabin yoidemoisa. Everybody knows that you can't pass on something else to somebody else. As Rashi says, if I lend you something, I didn't lend it to you to lend to somebody else. Everybody knows a shoyl cannot lend it to somebody else. So it cannot be that Rebbe here is trying to tell me about Metzidik Halacha. That's Poshut. That's not what's happening here. Ella, Rebbe is actually teaching us that sometimes because I mixed in the issue of a pekadon here, I mixed in my Rolex, that will actually have an impact on whether or not the shlichus will be good or the get itself. Ella zimnin the Gittin nami lo have. Sometimes because he mixed in his Rolex, it will actually impact the kashrus of the get. Why? The nasa kamisha amar loy al tergarsha ela babayis v'girsha baliyah. It's like he put a tanai into the way the get has to be given. For instance, if he says it should only be on the first level, and you end up giving the get on the second level, you violated a tanai, and it will not work. Or al tergarsha ela b'yamin v'girsha b'smoil, because technically a baal can put any tanai as long as it doesn't affect the krisus. The baal can put any tanai in. Because I told you to pick up my Rolex. So you can't now tell Shmuel to pick up my Rolex. I asked you to pick up my Rolex. I'm happy you asked that Shaila. Hold that Shaila. Because where's there one shomer giving it over to another shomer? It's a shomer. We're talking about a shomer. It's halach and shmira. Right. Well, if I'm picking something up for somebody, I'm a shomer automatically. And not only am I bringing it, I'm a shomer as well. So you wonder why I picked shoyl and soicher? You didn't hear what I said before. I asked the kasha beferish, and I answered the reason why it's chapped on daf shoyl and soicher is because in a way there's a bigger chiddush there. Because stama shomer, it's pashut you can't give it over to somebody else. You have no right to. But a shoyl, you see, I gave you biosin, I gave you shtamshus. So maybe because of that, you would be able to give it over. Kamash Malon, even though I trusted you to use it yourself, and I gave you a bios, even a shoyl can't give it over. Gavalti. So Zog to Gemara Viter. So exactly how does this play out? The Chula Alma, Hecha de Nafka La Pei, the Yovele Chayfetz. Everybody holds that if the first shliach did not give any direction to the second shliach regarding the Rolex, all he did was he told the shliach, I can't go on, I'm not feeling well, go take this get, deliver it to this woman. So if she comes to greet the shliach, why is she greeting the shliach? Tosfos says it's because she knows the guy got sick, so she wants her get. So she starts making her way to the shliach. In the meantime, she bumps in to the shliach that he made. So she heard that shliach A can't make it, so she's now going towards him. She doesn't realize that shliach B was appointed, and now shliach B bumps into her. So and she on her own. No one asked for it because the shliach A didn't even tell shliach B about this chayfetz. But she on her own handed the Rolex to shliach B, and then v'hada shakla mina gita, and then he passed her on the get. He gave her the get. There, kula amaloi pligi the gita ma'al yahav. Everybody holds that's a good get. You know why? Because I never told him. I never violated the Eimit Shani Shehebetani. I never asked him to pick up any Rolex. He gave the get, and that's all he was what he was doing. The fact that she gave him the rulex, that has nothing to do with the violation of the shlichus. So surely the shlichus for the get remains intact. Everybody would agree to that. He pligi, you know where there will be a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, because remember, Reish Lakish said it will have no impact on the get. It's only Rabbi Yochanan who says it has an impact on the get. He pligi heichi the amalei. If the adon gave strict, not the adon, if the husband gave strict instructions, and he said, "Shkoil mina chayfetz," first get my Rolex back before you hand over any get. I want my Rolex back. So he tells them specifically, first get my Rolex back, v'hadar havla gita, and only then should you give the get. So clearly, the Baal made a very serious tanai in how he wanted this transaction to go down. And now the shliach goes along. The yoyev lagita, the shliach, who the husband didn't want anyway, the second shliach, who the husband didn't want anyway, went and didn't even follow instructions. The yoyev lagita, first he gave her the get, the hadar shakel mina chayfetz, and only then did he get it. So there, he violated the shlichus. So if he violated the shlichus, Rabbi Yochanan hoisel boy the koshke b'shluchay. Rabbi Yochanan knows even if the first shliach, who was a full legitimate shliach, if he went and did this, it would be possible. You know why? Because he violated the shlichus. Reish Lakish machzer b'shluchay the koshke boy. Reish Lakish says no. It's even when he says it's lav davka and it wouldn't violate the shlichus. Yes, it is the same. It is the same. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. I'm sorry, let's see Rashi. Bereisha. So he gave her the get, which means he didn't follow instructions. When the husband said, "Get me the Rolex back," he was makbid. His hope was to use the get as the wedge to get his Rolex back. He's going to withhold the get until he gets what he wants. So clearly he's making a tanai in the nesinas a get. Only give the get if I'm getting my Rolex back. And this fellow, imshina, if he changed from what he was supposed to do, nasa kimisha amarloi, al tegarshena elababais v'gisha baliyah. Lagabi, this tanai, it was a serious tanai that was in effect. He violated the tanai. It will wipe out the whole shlichus. Hilchach Rabbi Yochanan poisel boy, the shliach rishon, even the shliach rishon, if he did it, he violated his shlichus, and surely it would have worked. The kol shekei b'shluchai, surely if he passed it on to another shliach, that shliach would be a problem. And that's what the Gemara says. Zimnin the Gittin nami lehav. That's what Rabbi Yochanan meant. Sometimes the instructions lagabi the pekadon will actually impact the validity of the get. Therefore, the Mishnah says, don't even send it b'yaracher. You know why? Maybe when the first shliach passes on the shlichus to the second shlichus, he will not clearly convey the terms of the shlichus. That's one option. He might not tell him, you better not give the get until you get the Rolex back. Or he will convey it, but the shliach sheni won't pay too much attention to that. And then he's going to end up doing it wrong. It'll passel again. He holds it's not a kabeda. It's just normal how he says it, but Avada, he doesn't care. Right, so Tosfos doesn't like that. Tosfos doesn't like this svar, and Tosfos also has your kasha. What's the lotion? He's like, Kapad is, I don't want her to get it. It's not a kapad on the shliach. So that's why Tosfos has a little bit of a different shot. Okay, so let's see the Gemara Vayter. Maybe get, it's a stick of long Tosfos, but Tosfos argues on Rashi's track because of these kashas. Maybe get Medina Sayyam. Rabbi Yochanan Paisel. Maybe get Medina Sayyam, V'chala. Someone's bringing up Medina Sayyam. So now he has to say, B'fani nechtam, B'fani nechtam. But he got sick. So what does he do? Oyster shliach bevezdin. What he does is he makes a shliach in bezdin, which means he's going to go into bezdin and he's going to say b'fani nechtav or b'fani nechtam, right? So oyster shliach bevezdin, he has to pass it on to another shliach in front of bezdin. So he goes to bezdin. He says, I have this get. I have to deliver it. I have to say b'fani nechtam, but I can't. So they bring another shliach there, and in front of bezdin, he passes it on to a second shliach. And shliach A, who's the only one who could say this, will say b'fani nechtav or b'fani nechtam. Now, Zok the Mishnah, be'en shliach achrein, tzarech sheyoymar b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav. The second shliach does not have to say it. It was already said in Bezdin. Ella, what he can't say, that's correct. Ella oimer shlich Bezdin. All he has to say is, I was appointed by the Bezdin to deliver this get. So let me ask you a question. It's a little bit modern in the Lashon. Why does it ben shlich achroin? Why does it ben shlich hasheni? Ben shlich hasheni. Tzarech sheyoymar. So that's something that we're going to focus on shortly. No, he doesn't have to do it either, because as Rashi says, all I have to is a shlich bezdin, and you can assume umistama bezdin also adover bechsherei. Once I said that I'm a shlich bezdin, it's assumed that everything is going to be okay. Yeah. Oh, that I don't know. Amalei Rabbanon, probably a legit bezdin, because the whole part is we can assume they did it right. Only a legit bezdin. Well, there it's different. There he wasn't saying b'fani nechtav, right? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I don't know if that type of business would work for this transaction. Do me a favor, go ask your father the following question. Shliach the shliach, mas v'shliach eloi. This second shliach, what if he can't make it? Could he give it over to a third shliach? Amar lahu. So he told them. So Avimai told the Rabbanon, you shouldn't even ask that question, because mitikatani eina shliach achroin michlal the mashva shliach. How come it didn't say eina shliach hasheni? The shliach achroin, which means that no matter how many shluchim it goes through, at the end of the day, the last shliach that finally gives her the get does not have to say b'fani nechtav b'fani nechtav when he gives her the get, because it's all from Bezdin. So from the Lashon eina shliach achroin, we know that in fact the second shliach can make a third shliach, and so on and so forth. I'm sorry? Well, that's the point. When it says he doesn't have to say it, it means it won't be possible. That's what it means. It'll work. Because of course he can't say it. He wasn't there in Medina. So only the first guy didn't say it. You know what child you could ask? Is kimash for shliach, when the second shliach wants to appoint a third shliach, is it bebezdin or yafilu shaloi bebezdin? Amrulei, that I'll answer, but we know that as well. Hanami lo bebezdin. No, that's not either a child. You know why? Midikatani ela oimer shliach bezdin ani. So it's clear. The whole part is I don't have to say b'fani nechtav. I say I'm a shliach bezdin. That means every single shliach has to be able to say I'm a shliach bezdin, meaning everyone had to have been pointed in bezdin. The opposite. Amalu, why you ask me that question? Ask me a more basic question. No. How like a boiler, and I know for sure you can make a shliach. It's not a shliach achrain. Michlal, the shliach, master shliach, there'll be more than just two. Elakika b'boilam is when the second shliach makes a third, and so on and so forth. Is it bevezin or is it shalai bevezin? Amalu hanami l'teboilahu. That's not either a shaila. The katani alayim shlich beznani. Clearly, there can be as many shluchim as you want, and clearly every shliach who points another shliach must do it in front of Bez. Because that well, obviously the Gemara has such a shaila. The Gemara brings a raya from the Lashon Mishnah that each one has to be a shlich bezdin. Right? You're explaining to me why it was a shaila. And the Chlam was a shaila. That's why we have a raya from the Mishnah. Amarabba, shliach be'eretz Yisrael oisa kama shluch. A shlich in Eretz Yisrael can make multiple shluchin. Remember, a shlich in Eretz Yisrael does not have to say b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav. So therefore, he could just make multiple shluchim, as Rashi says, Rishon l'sheni, u'shneni l'shlishi, v'chein lo'olam, v'ein tzarech bezdin. He doesn't need a bezdin. Why? Hoil v'ein harishon tzarech lo'omer b'fani nechtav. Since the first shlich who brought it from Eretz Yisrael does not have to say b'fani nechtav, ha'achnami ein tzarech lo'omer shlich bezdani, because we don't need that verification that there was a b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav. Amar Bashi, what happens in Meis Rishon? What if the first shliach dies? Batlu chulam. They're all batlu because all of their koyach stems from him. In Meis Rishon, achalagia get liyada. They're all batlu. Amar Mar Baravashi, had Abba de katnusi. This that my father said, he must have said it in his younger years because there's a great makam to argue on that. Why should the first shliach be the hinge that controls the whole chain? It says, Ilu meis Baal midi mishasha isbuhu. What if the Baal died before the get was handed over? Everybody agrees it's not going to be a good get. So therefore, kulu mikoyach man ka'asu mikoyach the bal ka'asu. So therefore, it proves that each shliach has a direct connection to the Baal. The Baal is still holding the cards here. The Baal is still the Baal over here. And therefore, it's not relevant if the first shliach died, second shliach died. As long as the Baal is still alive, any one of the future shluchim can still connect to the Baal. If the Baal is around, they all have their mandate. Less Baal. If the Baal is not around, less nulachulu. They lost their mandate. Who gathered the shardel Gittin visu. Someone went to a shliach and he says, "I want you to take this get to my wife." Amar shliach, the shliach said, "Lo yadanala. I don't know who your wife is, so I can't go and find your wife because I don't know who she is." Amar lei, I'll tell you what to do. Zil, go to the city where she's in, and you have a la'aberbamer yume. Pass the get on to aberbamer yume. The iu yodala, he knows who she is, and then v'leisel v'lisve nehela, and aberbamer yume will deliver the get. Also, so he gets to the city. And he couldn't find Abraham Yumi. So now he's stuck. What is he supposed to do? So Ashkecheli Rabavo, Rab Chanina Bar Papa, Rab Yitzchak Nafcha. He met these three people. The Yosy Rab Safar Gabayu, and Rab Safar was there as well. And Omrulay, they told him, I have a simple solution for you. Misar Milach Kamedidam. Give over your words in front of us. In other words, you can tell us, we'll act as the Bezdin, and you'll tell us, Befani Nechtam, or Befani Nechtam. And then the Chiyesi Abraham Yume, when Abraham Yume ends up coming back, he's probably on a trip somewhere. When he gets back, Neis Vinyale, we'll give it to him as a bezdin, and then Velezo Velesvinela, and then he'll give it to her, and then you can go home. You don't have to wait around. Amal Rab Safra, how could you possibly suggest? So he asked these three dayanim, how could you suggest that this would work? Vashliach Shalayditen Legershim. Think about it. This shliach never got a mandate from the husband to give a get over. He only got a mandate to give it to Abba Minyume. So he's not a shliach legershin. So if he's not a shliach legershin, how could he give it over? How could he give that over? How could this be a good get? He was mandated only to give it to Abba Minyume. So the Lamaisa, when he got the mandate was to give it to Abba Minyume. But shliach shlo nitl legershin zok Rashi. Shliach hazeh lo not shliach legersha, ela lemoishrei la Abba Minyume. Hilchach la b'makom balkoi lemoishrei li'arachet. So don't worry, your svar is a good svar. Ichzufu. That's a very good. That's what Chaim is asking. Excellent. So ichzufu. When he asked that question, the three dayanim were like, "I'm still embarrassed. He has a good taina. Why don't we think of that?" Amar Rabba, what are you talking about? Kapchinu Rab Safra l'tlosa Rabbanan Smuchi. Rabba said it seems like Rab Safra knocked out. He knocked out their legs of the Chashav Bezdin. He took them out. This is the biggest cheer in the coffee room in Lakewood when the tumblers can slug up their Rav, slug up the dine. Everyone has their tumbles. He did them. Amar Abashi, what are you talking about? They didn't slug. He didn't slug him up at all. He's completely wrong. Mika Amar le Abba Bar Menyume veloyat. Did Abba Bar Menyume say, "I don't want"? Did the husband, when he sent you, did he say, "Give it to Abba Bar Menyume and you shouldn't"? That's not what he said. He would have been happy if you would have been able to. You didn't know him, but Avada he would have been happy to give it over, as Rashi says. My kapchusa, halayna tshuva. Rabba's kasha is not a kasha. Rab Safra's kasha is not a kasha. To me, Amalei Baal. Exactly what Dubi and Chaim asked. You have a high Yodala, had he known who this woman was, like Chaim said, his first intention was that this shliach should give it to her directly. So therefore, it's not a kasha, he is a shliach l'gershon. Ika d'amri, there was another way this story went down. And in fact, Rava said the same thing. Rab Safra seemed to have knocked out the Talmid Chachamim, and instead of Rabashi disagreeing, Rabashi agreed to Rava. Rabashi, in fact, you're right. The Rab Safra slugged up the Dayanim. So what is the mistake? Maika Omerle Abba Bar Menyume. Maika Omerle. What did the Mishalech? What did the husband say? He said Abba Bar Menyume Belayat. So technically, he's not a shliach l'gershon. So there's two different sides of the story. I'm sorry. I hear. Okay, let's see the Gemara back. Who Gabra the Shadol Agit Litvisi? Someone sent his wife a get. Amalei l'shliach lo teisvin nahala. I don't want you to give this get to the woman, to my wife, at Hasan Yomi, until 30 days passed. Okay. Isnis begav tlasin yoim. Within those 30 days, he became sick, and he was no longer able to wait till after the 30 days. He can't give it now because it's not a good get now, but he's not able to stick around until 30 days to give it to her. So what is he supposed to do? Also, look at Rava. Amarava, why in our Mishnah, when someone is sick, we allow him to pass it on to another shliach? Mishum donus, because he's an honest. Well, guess what? Hainami honest. This fellow who can't wait past the 30 days is honest, and therefore Amarle Misar Milach Kamedi Don. Say you're befani nechta b'nechta ta'as. The labosler tlas and yoim, and then after the 30 days passed, Mishavinon shliach will be able to appoint another shliach. The yoiv lenahela. Amalei Rabban l'Rabba. How could you do that? Well, shliach shlei nitin legerishinu. The same kasha. It's not nitin legerishin because until 30 days pass, he's not approved to give the get. So within 30 days, he's not approved to give the get. Amalu, that's not called not approved. He went to the boss of Tlas and Yoim in Matzi Megarish, since he does have a mandate to give the get. There's just a time frame. That's called Shliach Samos or Legerishin. Therefore, Shliach Shanit and Legerishin, who, and it's good. Frankly, more, let's talk about another issue. Once the Baal puts in a set delay, that means he knows that for the next 30 days, this woman is still his wife. Well, then why aren't we worried that in those 30 days where he knows he's safe? See, normally when he sends a get with somebody, he doesn't know that the guy got there before him. The guy left before him, so he'll never have relations with his wife because she might be Migureshus. But if he knows that he has 30 days, so maybe he met her and he was Mephaisher, and maybe they got together, now to possible get to get Yasham. And I'll prove to you that you have to be choshit for that. Milait nan, didn't we learn? What if someone gave a get and he said, right, this was the typical get that was given by soldiers in the armies. And he died within 12 months. Raise a get, it will be a get. But we asked the kasha, how could it be a get? Maybe before he died, he got together with his wife, and that means that gets impossible to get Joshua. Rabbi Barabuna took this kasha seriously, and he had to make a ukimta. The Omer, it's speaking where when he gave the get, he also declared in Bezdin, Nemenes olai loimer shaloi bosi. I believe her, I want Bezdin to believe her that if she says that we didn't have relations, her get is good. So you see, we're choishet shemapais, it's just over there, it was mitigated. But in our case, if he sent the get and he didn't want the get to be given for 30 days, why isn't there a concern, dilma pais? Zokamar ichsif, they got embarrassed. Because that's a good question. How could this get be good? L'soif iglay milsa. After they looked into it, it turned out that this woman was never in a suah. She was only in a rusa. The rusa boy. If she's in a rusa, we're not choshed that they're in pious. If she was in a suah and he had a very close, loving relationship with his wife, then we're afraid that he'll want to have relations with her again. But if he was never in the suah in the first place, there's no chashash at all of shema pious. They found it as a rusa boy, so it turns out their psak was good. Amar Rava, Amar ben Nesua, Yomer bar rusa. Just because by an Asur there's a Chashash Hemapayis, there's no such Chashash by an Arusa. As Rashi says, by an Asur, Shechaviva Alav, Umechazel Lefaisa. And Arusa is not going to bother. Amarava, how about the Kamei Bailam? This would be a Shaiva. He matched with Bezdin Shliach. When Bezdin appoints the Shliach, so this fellow came from Medina Sayyam, he said in front of Bezdin, I'm now Bezdin has to appoint another Shliach. Is it the fun of or Shaloi B'fun? Does he have to be there? Look, Rashi, mi boy b'fun of the Shliach Kama. Does Bezdin have to appoint the second shliach while the first shliach is there? Or yafilu shalei b'fanav kagoin zeshu anus ve'ni yachal akav kan v'yelech l'akay. We had this guy; he has to go back home. He can't wait past 30 days. And after the 30 days, Bezdin is going to be meman another shliach to deliver the get. He won't be here. Is that going to be a problem? Hadar pashta vein b'fanav vein shalei b'fanav. They paskin that it doesn't make a difference if Bezdin has the mandate. They can appoint another shliach even though the first shliach is not there. Sholch mitam bein b'fanav bein shalei b'fanav. Dr. Gemara Baiter. Hahud Amar, the famous Gemara. Hud Amar, he gives her a get and he says, Ilo yasina atlas and yoimi. If I don't get it back by 30 days, lahavigita, you have your get. What happened was he was last minute and he got right to the other side of the river right before the 30 days. Also upaske maver, and the bridge broke. So now he can't get across. He's stuck. Amalu, he screams across the river, Dear, Chazuda soy, I'm here, I don't want to get, Chazuda soy. Amar Shmuel said, sorry, loy shmei masya. We don't consider it like you came, the get is chal. Rashi offers two reasons. Dr. Rashi, loy shmei masya, loy matay atacha. He didn't come. He didn't get her. He's talking about here. I was an oinus. The ain tinus oinus b'tanai gittin lememar nisna. Oinus doesn't work when you make a tanai and a get. It doesn't. An oinus doesn't work. Even if you're an oinus and you couldn't fulfill the tanai, it's still chal. That's one shot. Inami yesh oinus begitten. But if you hold, even if you want to hold yesh oinus begitten, so you can claim oinus, this is not an oinus. We learned this sugya at the beginning of Ksubas. It was a common thing for bridges to go down, for there to be issues with crossings, and therefore the boiler less nuye. He should have specified that I'm not going to be susceptible to an issue if the bridge breaks. Since he didn't mention that, it's too bad for him. Hahud Amarlu. Imagine in that case, he gave her a get. I guess they were pressuring to give a get, and he said, if I don't make an effort to get you to come back, to get you to want to stay married, atlos and yoimin for 30 days, lahavagid it should be a get. So what did he do? Also, Faisa, he went and begged forgiveness, and he said nice things. He said nice things to her, and he made her all the promises in the world. Please come back. She says, nah, I'm not listening this time. I absolutely don't want to be married to you. Omer Rabbi Yosef asked the kasha. Rabbi Yosef said, this is not called a piyus. Now, so we're assuming that he didn't say you have to be willing. If I make an effort, then it's not a get. So what he meant was, I'm giving you the get, and if I don't come and make an effort to show you that I want to reconcile within 30 days, then it should be a get. So here he tried, it didn't work. So maybe the get should be bottled. Amar Beishav, what are you talking about? Just go and say I'm sorry. That's not even called piyus. Piyus means you got to buy flowers. It's got to cost you money. Dr. Rashi, since he didn't go give her a lot of money, he didn't give her takava de dinri. That's not called a. Just saying I'm sorry is empty words. You got to put your money where your mouth is. I gotta go. What if he doesn't have money? Too bad. I'm reading all this. You can never say oinus b'tay get. That's not called piyus. That was one approach. Ikadamri Amar Yosef midi takava the dinner boil a law. He doesn't have to give that to her. He doesn't have to give it to her. And the vada he was mafaiser and the get will not be again. A paisa v'lo yivaisa. Ha command Amar yesh oinus begitten. The second nusach is going according to the man yesh oinus begitten. He could say he did what he could, and therefore it's not a get. Ha command Amar, the first sheet who holds that it's not considered a piyus is who holds ein oinus begitten. Zok the Mishnah weiter. I have to go. I'm mamish in the rush. Well, Amalva moyes es hakoyin ves halevi ves haani. A koyin needs money, a levi needs money, and an ani needs money. So someone lends them money. Where's their collateral? He made a deal with them. He said, I have a lot of trumas and maestros to give. So what I'll do is, I'm going to, let's say I'm lending the coin $100,000. Anyway, I would have had next season, at the end of the harvest, I'm going to have $100,000 worth of truma. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep that truma for myself, and that's how you'll pay me back. I'm sorry? Same thing with Donnie. I could, Meiser Ani. I'll have $100,000 of Meiser Ani. I'll keep the Meiser Ani. So the halacha is, Mafresh Alein, Becheska Shen Kayamin, Bein Choshish. How does he know they're still alive? How do we know they're only going to become rich? So the halacha is, he can be mafresh for them and then retain it to himself because we can assume that they're still alive. Because if they're not alive, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry that the oni became wealthy. Mesu, what if they taka died? So now he can't be mafresh because if he could give it to them, then he could take it back because they owed him. But if they're not around, then it belongs to other kayanim. Other kayanim don't owe him a penny. So how does that work? Meis hakoyin oyalevi oyhesher ani. I'm sorry. Meisu, if they died, tzarich litel reshus min yorshim. Then yorshim do not have to pay off the debt of their parents unless there is real collateral. There's nechashim sheish b'nachrais. They have karkois. If not, then they have the option: do we want to pay back or do we don't want to pay back? So if they say, yeah, we'll be happy to pay back, and therefore you can keep that. However, in hilbam b'fnei bezdin, which means there was a shibud, then ain't tzarich litol reshus min yorshim, because then there's a shibud, and the shibud he'd be able to collect on the shibud with the trumas and maishas that he's going to withhold. Correct the Gemara. The alpha gav he's holding back the trumas and maishas, yet he never gave it to them, so they were never kind of them. So he's been gozel the kayanim, he's been gozel leviim. If the Levi that he wanted to get it from actually was koined, now the Levi can give it back to him. But you can't just do it willy-nilly. If he's just keeping it, he's been goizel all the shaving. Omarav, the Makire Kahuna Levia. We're talking about people who he was very friendly with, and it was known, everybody knew that this fellow gave all of his truma to Kohen A, and all of his Meiser to Levi B, and all of his Meiser Ani to Ani C. So therefore, everybody's automatically miyayish from it. So since everybody's miyayish from it, it's only left to that person. No, before he takes it for himself, he'll have to tell somebody to be kohen it for them on their behalf. So we have to stop here. I fell a little bit behind. I wanted to finish Daf Lama today, but we didn't, but we'll keep on pushing. Okay, so everybody should have a wonderful, wonderful day. And once again, this year is dedicated by Duvi Menzelevsky, Lishmas Ruvain Ben Rav Eliezer, who the Shama should have an Aliyah today. Since your time, it's Chaf Hey today. Chaf Hey today. And the Shama should have an Aliyah, and he should be a male Joshua for his family and for all of Klal Yisrael.